Into our caging results, March was not a great month. There's about 15% drop in mail revenue from March 22nd, March 2022 to March 2023. Now, March 2022 was the invasion of Ukraine. You've seen a lot of, the think pieces in the stories and all of those good things from that. But it's something that we definitely want to keep track of in our results and put a little bit of an asterisk by. But by and large, about a little over a third of the organizations were up, a little under 2/3 of organizations were down for the month. So not a great month. If you experience that, you are not alone. But I know that doesn't particularly help in a lot of cases. Hopefully it does help in educating your boss and things like that. This also doesn't, this is, as we said, caging results. So it doesn't take into account things like, hey, there was also less mail volume during the month. That is illuminating as well. So, new report from Indiana University School of Philanthropy. Some interesting insights about what Americans are thinking about philanthropy. By and large, time, treasure, and talent are mostly what people think of in terms of philanthropy. Younger people do include giving testimony and giving tithes in there. And this will be a general theme throughout this and something that I talk about fairly often. But the idea that people are more and more likely to view things that we would not consider as philanthropy as philanthropic giving. Giving to a nonprofit isn't the only way of getting, that dopamine hit, that ideal of I'm doing something good in the community. People are getting that in other ways, and that becomes through in the study. So, for example, here, younger folks are far more likely to say participating in crowdfunding campaigns where, like a GoFundMe, where they're giving directly to a person. That's considered charitable giving for younger folks, not older folks. And in this case, I'm an older folk. I'm just on the older American side of things. So if you're there, you're not alone. Also, you'll see greater acceptance of impact investing. Investing in good companies is considered by some to be charitable giving. And it's like, yes, it's a good thing to do. Is it charitable giving? Not to my mind and way of thinking. And that's really borne out by this one, where people are likely to say that cash donations to friends or family is about the same in terms of value to American society as charitable giving. And so people are getting that dopamine hit in many different ways. It's also really heartening for me as someone who creates some of these reports, some of this thought leadership, that you can still be in Indiana University and put out a big report and have a lot of good information in there and still misspell mutual in your chart. Warms my heart. I feel very seen. Indiana University, I see you. Mistake that anyone can make and can definitely get through X number of rounds of review. So I feel you there. Nonprofits are the most trusted or type of entity to do what is right generally. However, 39% isn't really that good. It's the best, but it's still not great. And so people talk about the erosion of trust in institutions. This is very much what you're seeing. When Indiana University looked at nonprofit organizations, they found that younger individuals, people who are more educated, women, and people who attend religious services more frequently, those are folks who are significantly more likely to trust nonprofits, it's good to see that younger people are believing in them more. However, our donor bases tend to be older, and so that could be some of the erosion that you're seeing there. See that Congress and large corporations are bringing up the rear, so that level of trust is very low. And then nonprofit organizations were the most trusted in terms of ability to solve societal problems. However, only about 1 out of every 7 people say they have a great deal of confidence in nonprofits being able to solve those problems. One of the things you have in politics is right track, wrong track measures. And if that's the case, nonprofits aren't getting reelected. Of those people who have an opinion on the topic, about 18% say we're headed in the right direction, about 30% say we're headed in the wrong direction, and then 53% say they don't know. Younger individuals, those who are more educated, and Black/African Americans are significantly more likely to say right direction, or lower education level, and white non-Hispanic Americans are more likely to say wrong track. And so there's definitely a shift from our traditional donors. You think of a traditional direct mail donor, where lower trust, lower belief that headed in the right direction, and the future is looking a little brighter, but still not ideally where we'd like to be. Generally speaking, people aren't familiar with a whole lot of different ways of giving. Things like impact investing and giving circles, far down the list, donor advised funds also. Basically, if you are in the market to hear about donor advised funds and impact investing, you probably have heard about those. These skew definitely more toward the wealthy. Foundations are on the other side of the spectrum. People have heard of them, may not be familiar with them, but they know of foundations by and large. People don't know about what the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act did vis-a-vis increasing standard deduction and thus making charitable donations less deductible. Not surprising to ask Americans what any particular bill does, even as large as that package and as well covered as that package. Yeah, people aren't going to know that offhand. I'm honestly a little bit surprised that about a third of people know that it increased the standard deduction, and 18% of people know about capping the state and local deductions. That's pretty high in my mind. Also, the CARES Act, which made the universal that had the universal tax deduction. About half of people didn't have any opinion on it, but that universal tax deduction among people who had an opinion on it, overwhelmingly positive. So good news there as we continue to lobby for that. I know that's a priority for more in our lobbying efforts, and I'm guessing for a lot of you as well. And then if you did have universal tax deduction, about 16% of people say that they would somewhat or dramatically increase their giving if they could get that deduction. The 2% that say that they would decrease their giving if it were more tax deductible are just proof that, you know, cats walk across keyboards and you have those types of weird artifacts in surveying. So any questions on any of this? Feel free to shout it out, come off mute and shout out any questions you have, or if you're feeling shy, you can put it in the chat. Okay, over to our friends at the USPS, which are they are losing a lot more money this year than they expected. Cost control, yay, mail volume losses are accelerating. So let's go back to January of 2021. USPS said we're going to really increase the cost of mailing, and they felt they had additional license from Congress to do that. And the Alliance of Nonprofit Mailers, people said, hey, won't a big rate increase exacerbate declines in mail volume? And the Alliance for Nonprofit Mailers always was arguing that, yes, you're going to see huge declines. And the USPS said, don't worry your pretty little heads about that. Price elasticity means that people are going to use the mail kind of regardless of what the costs are. But as Alliance points out, the elasticity models are based on increasing in line with inflation, not these huge increases that we've been seeing over the past 2 years. So how's that going? USPS had significant drops of mail income. Volume fell by 11%, leading to a revenue decrease of 6%. The USPS thought, hey, we can increase prices and that'll lead to revenue increases. But for the year, revenues dropped, literally dropped, because volume has dropped so much. So much for those price elasticity graphs. And the USPS is in kind of a unique situation because they have to go to every house anyway. They don't have a huge increase in costs per marginal cost. Delivering the first letter with the postal system costs billions and billions of dollars. Once you have that infrastructure in place, delivering the second letter is mere cents. It's the sorting that goes into it, and I guess additional physical labor in lifting that, but not a huge amount. And so when you decrease mail volume, you're not able to amortize the cost of sorting machines and trucks and infrastructure like you would want to. So from that same article, the Alliance of Nonprofit Mailers said, hey, we warned y'all about this. USPS is systematically eliminating mail volume and revenue as a result of massive rate hikes. So what does USPS say is happening? They are blaming inflation, but their costs have risen less than 1% this fiscal year. They've been on a cost-cutting streak. Now, inflation takes its toll on other parts of the mail process. We're going to talk about paper in just a second and the costs there, but certainly hasn't been helped by the postal increases. And of course, USPS just announced for July that they are looking for another significant rate increase. We'll talk a little bit more about that next month when it's a little bit more fully baked. Any questions? Going over to paper, the fabric of our lives, we saw coming up to the pandemic that about a quarter of the uncoated free sheet capacity and about half of the coated free sheet capacity came out of the system. Paper mills just weren't producing paper as much anymore. So uncoated free sheets are what you think of when you think of printing production. That's advertising mail and billing and bank statements. Magazines and product catalogs and those sorts of high-end things are what coated free sheet is. And so in 2020, coming up to the pandemic, direct mail volume fell. And as we saw with a lot of these economic systems, people were like, oh, we'll just shut down for a while. Now, we talked about at the time, there's going to be a whiplash effect, and there was a whiplash effect. So news orders shot up in 2021 as people realized that, hey, when people are at home more, maybe mail's a good idea to reach them. So new orders increased 25% year over year. Manufacturers went through their inventory. We had cautioned on these calls, hey, you want to go out, you want to order well in advance to make sure that you have your paper capacity. We certainly used all of our allocations and work to try to get more of them. And so there was increased costs in 2021 and in 22, significant double-digit increases in the cost of paper. However, it is calming down now. Mailing slowed in Q4 of last year. Some of the printing vendors are back to having inventory a little bit. And so there's strong paper production projected for 2023 because all of those paper mills said, hey, there's demand for our product again. Let's go back in there and let's keep a bit of the margins that we've been able to have. Paper is traditionally a low margin business, and so they're happy to be able to make a bit of a profit. So we're not expecting drops in price. We're probably looking at still some increases, but there's going to be less volatility in it. And probably less price increases than what you saw in previous years. So good news on the paper market. We're going to be putting out a market advisory about that here pretty soon, but wanted to make you aware of it. We're into our potpourri section. So for those of you with a low tolerance for nonsense, now's your chance to jump off the call. We get into a little bit of nonsense here. You have been warned. Okay. So Nobel Prize winning economist Paul Krugman has did a New York Times op-ed that said, hey, ChatGPT, these large language models aren't going to be changing much in the next decade. So how have predictions like this worked out for Paul Krugman in the past? Back in 1998, he wrote an article where he said that the internet's impact on the economy will be no greater than the fax machines. And he did so in a piece talking about why most economists' predictions are wrong. So to summarize all of this, an economist who made a bad prediction in an article where his point was that economists make bad predictions, made a potentially bad prediction based on the same logic for which his other prediction was bad. His logic was, and it's not a bad premise, his logic was that people tend to overhype technology, and they absolutely do. And so let's say 80–90% of technologies are overhyped. The other 10 to 20%, they are underhyped. And so you look back at things like the internet, you look back at the telegram, all of the stories that you heard about the internet, people told previously about the telegram. There were dating apps essentially for the telegraph. People got married over the telegraph without ever meeting each other. There's a great book about this called The Victorian Internet. And so these technologies aren't normally distributed, they're power law distributed, which means that they have big fat tails that go way out into it, and you can't see some of the big impacts of the technology while you're in it. And so, yes, were Periscope and Meerkat overhyped? Absolutely. Put those aside. There are some technologies that could be transformative, and I think generative AI is probably still going to be one of those. Both Google and Meta have said that they are testing AI to help you create ads. Google Ads is doing it now. Meta is looking till December. They have been using AI and machine learning in the targeting of those ads, and the placement of those ads, and the bidding systems, and all of that.
You guys to stay here.
It's only with these types of new technologies that they are getting into the words part of it. Google is also getting rid of its attribution models, other than data-driven attribution models. We've written about this on the blog, the More blog, that things like last click attribution, you basically become like youth soccer players where you're all running to the ball and all trying to score a goal. You have to have a goalie, you have to have some people playing defense, same sort of thing with attribution models. You have to have things that are doing that top of the funnel brand awareness effort. You know, a PSA may not convert, a Facebook ad may not convert directly, but they build the awareness that help you convert. And so those types of models aren't being well used right now, and they're going to more of these data-driven models. Millennials have made the switch where now a majority of millennials are homeowners rather than renters. There, you saw all of those think pieces talking about, oh no, millennials are ruining houses and boomers are ruining it for them by holding on to their houses. Who is to blame? Who is to fault for the fall and decline of the real estate industry? So let's take a big step back and look at this to say, millennials became an owner majority generation when the average millennial was 34. For Gen Xers, that age was 32. For boomers, that age was 33. So at 33, plus or minus 1, every generation shifts from being renter majority to owner majority. And so this is an opportunity for me to stand up on my soapbox and say, a lot of the stories about generations that you see are basically kids today. Plato complained about kids today and things like that, when reality, young people, no matter what generation, tend to live in cities more before they move out to the suburbs. They tend to rent before they own. They tend to job hop more because it is better to be the person for whom coffee is fetched than the fetcher of coffee. And so all of these things are things that happen among the young every time. And we're surprised by it in these think pieces every darn time. So I'm done now. This is an exhibit from Ai Weiwei, the artist. It's his take on the Claude Monet triptych, Water Lilies #1. and it's 50 feet long. And it's his first solo show in London's Design Museum. And the reason that I'm talking about it, because it does look like a Claude Monet ripoff, is the medium. I'll zoom in on it for you. Yes, those are Legos. He created Monet's water lily out of Legos. So just kind of fun and cool, hopefully. Any questions? Questions on anything that we've covered? Questions about things that we didn't cover that you would like to? Thank you, Terry. Okay, hearing none, feel free to reach out if you do have any burning questions. We are working on benchmarking right now as we speak. Hopefully that'll be out soon, and excited to be able to share that with y'all. Thank you very much for your time. Hope you have a good day.